Welcome to Curious Minds Unmasked podcast, where we uncover the hidden wonders of the world.
All right, everyone, get ready to dive in deep today. We're talking ocean exploration, and if you're anything like me, you're itching to see what's going on down in the deep blue.
It's a whole other world down there, isn't it? Like another universe right here on our own planet. Even astronauts who have seen the vastness of space come back blown away by what they find in the ocean. It makes you realize just how much we still don't know.
Wait, seriously? Astronauts are geeking out over the ocean. You'd think they'd be over that sort of thing after seeing the cosmos.
You'd think, right? But it just goes to show the power of the ocean. It's just this massive, mysterious thing full of the unknown. I mean, that's why NASA even uses it to train astronauts.
Oh, yeah, right. The Nemo 5 mission, wasn't it? They sent astronauts to live underwater, right? Something about preparing them for extreme environments.
Exactly. They basically lived in an underwater habitat for weeks, simulating the kind of isolation and challenges they'd face in space. I mean, it makes sense. The ocean can be just as unforgiving as space in a lot of ways. And now, NASA is teaming up with the Navy and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, diving deep into these crazy deep underwater trenches, the Huddle Zone Trench.
They're for the ones that are like miles deep, right?
Yeah.
Deeper than Everest is tall.
Yeah. The Mariana Trench, the deepest one, plunges down almost 7 miles. It's wild. That's like deeper than some planes fly. It's no wonder they nicknamed that part of the ocean Hades.
Hades, wow, that's intense. But also kind of fitting, right? Like this mysterious, unexplored underworld. I mean, what are they even hoping to find down there?
It's a world of extremes down there. Crushing pressure, total darkness, and yet it's teeming with life. They're sending down these remotely operated vehicles, these ROVs, to map the ocean floor, take samples, and study the life forms that somehow thrive in those insane conditions.
ROVs.
Yeah.
They're the ones that kind of look like underwater robots.
Right.
I remember seeing pictures. Pretty high-tech stuff.
Totally. They're equipped with all sorts of sensors and cameras and robotic arms. Some of them are as sophisticated as the Mars rovers, just built for the deep sea instead of deep space.
That's pretty wild when you think about it. But those things must be built tough, right? Didn't they lose one of those deep-sea vehicles a few years back?
Yeah, it was the Nereus vehicle back in 2014. It was on a mission in the Kermadec Trench when, boom, the pressure got to be too much. It was a huge loss for the scientific community. It just goes to show how challenging this kind of exploration is.
Makes you realize just how powerful nature can be.
Mm.
But wait, you said something about life down there in those
Right.
trenches. I always thought nothing could survive that deep.
For the longest time, everyone thought the same thing. I mean, it's pitch black. The pressure is unbelievable. It's like another planet down there. But then back in 1977, everything changed.
Oh, okay. What happened in 77? Did they send like a deep-sea camera down or something?
They did. Well, not just a camera. A team of scientists sent down this submersible called Alvin to explore hydrothermal vents. They're like underwater geysers spewing out superheated water. They expected to find, well, nothing much really, a barren wasteland.
Okay, so kind of like those volcanic vents on land, right? Except underwater.
Exactly. Only instead of molten lava, it's this super hot, mineral-rich water blasting out from the Earth's crust. But what they found around those vents, well, it blew everyone's minds.
Okay, now you have to tell me, what did they find? Giant tube worms, glowing squid.
It was like something out of a science fiction movie. They found entire ecosystems thriving in the darkness, translucent snailfish, ghostly white crabs, giant tube worms, you name it. And they were all thriving around these vents, living off of the chemicals spewing out, not sunlight like we're used to. It was a total game changer. Life as we knew it, just rewritten.
Okay, that is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense in a way, right? Like
Yeah.
life finds a way. But still, to think that all this is going on down there in complete darkness under all that pressure, it boggles the mind.
Yeah.
So how are these creatures even surviving down there?
Right. It's incredible. Evolution at its finest. They've adapted in the most incredible ways. Like, they have these special enzymes in their bodies that allow them to function under those extreme pressures. And get this, they've even evolved something called piezolites, which act like little internal pressure support beams for their cells so they don't just implode.
PSO what? Okay, you're going to have to break that down for me.
Yeah, it sounds made up, right? But basically, these piezolites help the creature's cells maintain their shape and structure even under immense pressure. It's like having built-in scuba gear on a cellular level.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like they're defying the laws of physics as we know them. And they're not just surviving, they're thriving down there. It just blows my mind. It makes you wonder, what else is down there? And where did this life even come from in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's led to A pretty wild theory that life on Earth, our very existence, might have actually originated in these deep sea environments, fueled by those chemical reactions happening around these hydrothermal vents, not on the surface like we used to think.
Hold on, whoa, whoa. You're saying life on Earth could have started in the depths of the ocean, in total darkness, under crushing pressure. That's a serious plot twist.
It's a mind-blowing concept, right? It just goes to show the ocean is full of surprises.
Okay, so we've explored the deepest, darkest depths, the unbelievable heat of those hydrothermal vents. But what about the other extreme of the ocean? The Arctic. It's amazing to me, it's the smallest of all the oceans, but it's still massive. And most of the year, it's covered in darkness under all that ice. What's going on down there?
You're right. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. The Arctic Ocean, it's the smallest, yeah, but it's still huge and surprisingly shallow, too, compared to the others. And you've got that thick ice cover for a big chunk of the year. Makes research a challenge, to say the least. But that just makes it even more fascinating when we do make discoveries.
I bet. But what about the creatures that live down there? How do they deal with that constant cold and the darkness?
There's some tough cookies, that's for sure. Life finds a way, right? The Arctic has this whole intricate ecosystem, perfectly balanced despite the harsh conditions. You've got phytoplankton, those tiny plants that form the base of the food chain, supporting a surprisingly diverse range of creatures.
Phytoplankton. Those tiny powerhouses are everywhere, right? I remember learning about them in school, but always thought of them in, like, warmer waters.
Speaking of unexpected things in the Arctic, did you hear about those huge sponges they found?
Oh, yeah. Those things are unbelievable. I mean, we're talking about sponges the size of cars here living under the ice. And get this, some of them are estimated to be over 300 years old. They're practically ancient.
300 years old. What have they been eating all that time? Ice?
Not quite. They've adapted to feed on something even more incredible.
How?
Fossilized remains. They're eating fossils. Can you believe that? Hold up. They're eating fossils. How is that even possible? Do sponges even have stomachs?
It's wild, right? A scientist named Teresa Morganti has been studying this, and it turns out these sponges have formed this symbiotic relationship with microbes. These microbes help them break down the fossilized matter and get the nutrients they need. It's like having a built-in composting system.
That is the coolest thing I've heard in a long time. A built-in composting system powered by microbes. I mean, that's next level adaptation right there.
It really is. Shows you how much we still have to learn about life in these extreme environments, and it's especially important as the Arctic changes due to climate change. But the surprises don't stop there. Remember those phytoplankton we were talking about?
The microscopic heroes of the ocean. Of course I remember. What have they been up to?
Well, get this. Researchers have found this massive algal bloom happening under the Arctic ice. It's like an underwater garden flourishing in the darkness.
Wait, a bloom under the ice? I thought algae needed sunlight to grow.
That's what everyone thought, which is why this discovery was such a shock. It totally changes our understanding of how and where life can thrive. It's like finding a rainforest in the middle of a desert. Totally unexpected.
This is blowing my mind here. First, it's sponges munching on fossils.
Yeah.
Now it's algae throwing a rave under the ice. The Arctic is way cooler than I ever gave it credit for.
It really is. And this isn't just any algal bloom either. They believe it's happening because the ice is thinning, letting in more sunlight. So it's a side effect of climate change, but with potentially huge consequences.
Okay, so climate change is having some unexpected and potentially huge consequences in the Arctic. Okay, I'm listening.
This huge increase in algae could have a ripple effect throughout the entire Arctic food web. We're talking about a shift in the entire ecosystem.
Man, that's wild. And a little scary, honestly. It seems like the tiniest change can have these huge impacts, That's what I love about this, though. Always something new and amazing to learn about the ocean. It's like its own little universe down there. Speaking of which, what other secrets has the Arctic been hiding from us?
Well, back in 2021, there was this really cool mission called the H-ON Project. They sent a remotely operated vehicle over 13,000 feet under the ice. They were exploring this thing called the Aurora Vent Field.
Okay, 13,000 feet under the ice. I can't even imagine. But what's an Aurora Vent Field? It sounds kind of magical, but also kind of ominous.
I know, right? It's actually not that different from those deep-sea hydrothermal vents we talked about earlier. Except, they're in the Arctic.
So we're talking scalding hot water shooting out into the freezing cold water. Okay, that does sound kind of magical and ominous. What's the deal with those?
Well, just like the vents in the deep sea, they create these really unique and fragile ecosystems. They're teeming with life forms that are adapted to survive in those conditions,
Hmm.
totally dependent on that chemical energy from the vents.
It's like two completely opposite extremes coming together to create something totally new and unseen anywhere else. So cool. But also kind of terrifying in a way, right? If these vents are so rare and delicate, shouldn't we be doing more to protect them?
You're absolutely right. Especially with all the talk about deep sea mining these days, we need to understand these ecosystems and protect them. That's why projects like the Acon Project are so important.
Right, we can't just go blundering into these places without knowing what kind of impact we might have.
Exactly.
It's a lot to think about. We've been talking about all these incredible discoveries, all these amazing adaptations and resilient creatures, but we can't forget about the impact we're having on these pristine environments.
You're hitting on a really important point, and that brings us to one of the biggest issues facing our oceans today: plastic pollution. And yes, it has reached even the Arctic.
You're kidding me, right? I thought the Arctic was supposed to be this pristine, untouched wilderness. How is that even possible?
Sadly, it's true. Plastic pollution really does have no boundaries. Ocean currents carry all that debris to every corner of the globe. And the Arctic, it's like a giant sink trapping that plastic in the ice. Researchers have found up to 12,000 pieces of microplastic per liter of ice.
12,000 pieces per liter. That is just that depressing.
It really is a stark reminder that our actions have consequences even in the most remote parts of the planet. And it's not just the amount of plastic that's worrisome, it's also the size. Some of these particles are tiny, like 11 micrometers across, smaller than a human hair.
So not only is there a ton of plastic trapped in the Arctic ice, but it's breaking down into these almost invisible particles.
Yeah.
Okay, now that is terrifying. What happens to those microplastics?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? They can be ingested by marine life, even the tiniest creatures, and it just works its way up the food chain. Could even impact human health eventually. It's a scary thought.
Okay, this is some heavy stuff. It feels like we're causing so much damage, and we don't even fully understand the consequences yet. What can we even do about it at this point?
So it's not hopeless, but it's going to take a collective effort. Reducing our plastic consumption is key, of course, but we also need to support research into finding ways to clean up the existing pollution and develop sustainable alternatives.
It's definitely a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Okay, I need a minute to process all of this. We've gone from awe-inspiring to downright depressing pretty quickly here. Maybe we can end on a slightly that later note.
How about we switch gears and talk about a different kind of extreme environment? One that, despite the harsh conditions, still inspires a sense of wonder and awe. Antarctica.
Antarctica. Now, that's a place that captures the imagination. I've always been fascinated by those subglacial lakes they've found buried under miles of ice.
Lake Vostok, right. What if they found down there? It sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It really is like something out of a movie. Lake Vostok is like a time capsule. It's been sealed off from the world for millions of years, and they've found evidence of microbial life down there, existing in complete darkness, using chemicals for energy instead of sunlight. It's incredible. Completely changes how we think about where life can exist.
And then there are those ice fish, right? The ones with see-through blood. How do they survive in those freezing temperatures? They've got this amazing adaptation, a special protein in their blood that acts like antifreeze, preventing ice crystals from forming. Evolution is so cool.
It's incredible to think about those creatures thriving in conditions that would kill most other life forms.
Yeah.
Really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? The ocean is full of surprises. The more we learn, the more we realize we don't know.
It makes you want to grab a submersible and go exploring for yourself.
You know, it's amazing to think about how these places we've been talking about, the Mariana Trench, the Arctic, they seem like different worlds, but they're all connected. Like you said, that plastic pollution has even reached the Arctic. It really makes you think about the impact we're having.
It's a sobering thought, for sure. We've been talking about all these incredible ecosystems and creatures, but it's clear we're putting them at risk.
So what do we do? How do we protect these amazing but fragile environments?
It's the big question, isn't it? And it's not an easy answer. We need to reduce our reliance on plastic, obviously, but we also need to be looking for ways to clean up the mess we've already made. And I think maybe even more importantly, we need to start seeing ourselves as part of the solution, not just the problem.
I like that. Shifting our mindset. It's about recognizing that we're all connected to each other and to the planet.
Exactly. Our actions have consequences, even if we don't always see them right away.
So how do we translate that mindset, that awareness, into action? What can we do?
It starts with education, understanding how these ecosystems work, how human activity impacts them, and how urgent the situation is. But knowing is only half the battle, right? We need to actually empower people to make changes in their own lives.
So making sustainable choices, supporting companies that are trying to do the right thing, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Every little bit helps. Choosing reusable products over single-use plastics, supporting businesses that prioritize sustainability, using our voices to demand change from our leaders. It all makes a difference.
It's about making those connections in our minds and in our actions. This deep dive has been incredible, eye-opening, inspiring, and honestly, a little terrifying at times. But it just goes to show how much we still have to learn about the ocean and how important it is that we protect it.
I couldn't agree more. The ocean is this vast, mysterious place full of wonder, but it's also incredibly vulnerable. It's on us to protect it, to learn from it, and to make sure that future generations can experience the same awe and wonder that we feel today.
Well said. Well said. To everyone listening, the next time you're at the beach or you're having some delicious seafood, take a moment to really think about the incredible journey that brought it to you. Think about those connections, those ecosystems, and what you can do to protect them.
And never stop asking questions.
Absolutely. Keep exploring, keep learning, and until next time, keep diving deep.